Still with us on the C Morning Show. We're now into the final hour of our show, and we are going to dive into one of the most urgent topics of our time, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. It's climate change. Now, the conversation is more critical than ever as global temperatures continue to rise. Natural disasters we often report on have become more frequent. Now, leaders, scientists, and activists from all around the world came together for COP29, which is a pivotal climate summit to try and find real solutions to the global crisis that we are facing.
Yeah, we are going to explore what intergenerational climate action really looks like, since it bridges the gap between those who have seen decades of environmental change and those who will face its consequences. Now, to find out more, let's welcome climate reality leader Ari Adi Pratomo, as well as climate reality communication and engagement specialist Hanna Astaranti. Hello.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, so let's begin our conversation. We're going to start with you, Ari. Okay, we'll talk about COP29. For those that are not familiar, explain a little bit about COP29 and what were, because we know that this is, it goes by number. What were the main objectives of this particular edition of this?
Okay, thank you. So this is the 29th series of the Conference of the Party. We call it for short COP. And it's held as the highest decision-making body of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is the UN Conference on Climate Change. And then why is very, very special this time? Because it's the time when we check whether our target has met its demand to reduce or to prevent the global temperature from 1.5 degrees uprising. And then this is also a crucial time not only to check on that target, but particularly also on the climate financing. The commitment on the climate financing is being made on this COP. Yesterday, because the meeting ran overtime for the COP, eventually many of the negotiators and countries were agreed that they will commit up to 1.3 trillion of the climate financing up to 2035. So it's one of the area that is most important for all of us.
Okay.
Okay. So can you explain more why is it very much significant than previous conferences? Because we know there's 28 earlier conferences.
Yes. Why is it very important? Because it's the time to show the commitment for each of the countries, whether developed or developing countries, to come together into this COP and then commit their actions and also the financing. Because without that, it's very hard for us to reach the target. Even so, it is not easy to reduce the amount of the impact that already created to the Earth. So this COP is very important because this is the checkpoint where we have to check everything, not only from the financing side, but also for the mitigation actions. So that's why one of the most important one. And then actually there are some of the agenda that hasn't been really solved during this COP, and it might be continued on the next COP in Brazil, in Belém. So we are hopefully will be reaching more, what we call it is a more realistic area of the collaborations in the next COP, in COP30 in the Belém.
Okay, now, Hanna, let's talk a little bit about Indonesia and our role. What role did Climate Reality Indonesia play at the COP29 summit?
Yeah, so this is our second time of joining the COP29. Last year we were in Dubai, and we were on the non-negotiation side where we host events. Like, for example, we have book launching, so we have talk shows. We're also there for speaking engagement as well. And we have this special program where we call Green Footprints, where we collaborate with young people there to reduce emission in a way that it's fun to do. So, because climate change is something that is quite hard to digest, right?
Hard to digest for a lot of people.
Right, yeah. And the words and the abbreviations and stuff, it's hard to digest. So we're trying to collaborate with people, especially youth, to like how we can solve this together in a fun way. So it's not really a big pressure for them. So that's how we're trying to get into their minds to it.
And in regards to the, we meant the funding, the initial $250 billion that was rejected and the final $300 billion that was agreed upon. Was Climate Reality Indonesia involved in any way in the discussions regarding this funding? And if so, like what was part of the key contributions?
The climate finance one.
Okay, so we are not directly involved in the negotiation because, as mentioned before by Hanna, we are more into the side events.
Okay.
But no negotiations. But again, we observe how the situation developed over there. We see it's very intense, and it's even ran over time, like many other COPs before. But again, what we can appreciate here is the collaborative spirit. Where we can see that the different countries come together, different NGOs, they actually put their minds together on solving the problem of climate change and trying to find the best way to save our Earth, because we have no other Earth. We just don't have this Earth.
Yeah, we're not going to move anywhere.
Yeah, we're not going to move anywhere. We're not going to move to Mars soon.
We're not going to
See what you mentioned about all the countries. I mean, we're talking about up to 200 different countries, many developing nations combining with some of the global financial superpowers, all having to come to one agreement, and that's can be very challenging as well.
Yeah, and we also want to know, can you tell us, Hanna, about the Green Footprints Initiative that launched by Climate Reality?
Sure. It's like I mentioned, it's a fun program.
What are some of these programs? I'm very curious.
It's basically for easier defining. It's like a walking tour, but like we are trying to put the environmental materials on it. Like we are doing a city tour. We're walking, we're using
the name footprints.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. We're doing public transportation as well. But we have checkpoints where we discuss on what do you think about the wayfinding to one place to another, and then how is the pedestrian walkway, and then how is the situation? Is it like proper for someone to walk there or not? So this is a series of a program that we do. This year, we've done the Green Footprints in Yogyakarta, in Prambanan Temple as well, and then we've done it in Balikpapan and Solo. Solo was our first project, and then we're trying to like put the reports together, and then we make the one in Baku, Azerbaijan. So yeah, so we're trying to incorporate all the materials that we have gathered, and then we're taking it to Baku, so everyone can. We're expecting the international participant to be there as well, so they can see like how was the situation in Indonesia and how is it compared to the one.
So this is a way of you to gather feedback as well, not only to introduce it in a more fun way, but to gather feedback as to how improvements can be made as well.
Exactly.
What was some of the feedback like? I'm actually curious.
Like for example, we are, since you know, in Indonesia, it's not very common for us to like walk from one place to
It's
another.
fairly new here in Jakarta.
Yes,
if you think about
exactly.
it. Right.
Yeah. That's one thing that makes it different from other countries. Like for example, in Solo on Yogyakarta, the pedestrian walkway is big enough and it's proper for someone to like walk on it. As the one in Baku as well, so it's a different situation like the one in Jakarta, and then the wayfinding as well. It's different in a way that it's easier to find a way of going to one place to another in another countries, you want to say. But like that's
integration of systems, right?
Exactly. But that's what makes it unique, because we actually know that there are things that we need to improve, and perhaps we cannot like only rely ourselves on the government. We have to like work ourselves. Like for example, there are many organizations and communities that are doing this as well. So urban mobility is something that we are trying to work on, because it affects the reducing emission campaign and then the air quality and stuff as well.
Yeah, we have to do our part.
Exactly.
Every day. Now, speaking about broader view, broader perspective, maybe I'm gonna come back to Mas Ari.
Yes.
To what extent can this agreement, the ones that we already have from COP29, can help developing countries to achieve like global climate targets? And since the amount was deemed to be far lower than what is required.
Okay, so why is it important for the developing countries? Because we at the developing countries may need substantial support, especially in the climate mitigation, adaptation, and also loss and damage. If we only depend on our own resources to just cope up with the issue of climate change, it may not be enough, or it may not be fast enough to meet the demand. Therefore, it is very important to have support from the developed countries to give us more push and then more power to just propel ourselves towards a more greener and sustainable ways of not only transportation but on energy and many others. So it is important. But another important thing is that what we can observe from the COP29 in Azerbaijan is that the intergenerational participation.
Okay.
Because yes, youth over there is given a place to not only discuss but also to voice out their ideas and their positions. Despite that, it may need some more improvement on that, but we can see that the recognition, that's the most important thing for us here, that we at Climate Trail Indonesia work a lot with the youth. Recognition is one of the areas that is very crucial for us.
We know that, by the way, sorry for interrupting, we know
Sure.
that from one COP to another, there is more and more focus when it comes to the youth. In fact, at the end of every COP, there's usually I'm sorry if the name slips my mind, but they basically come up with a list of agreements from or suggestions from the youth group of COP for them to be able to, kind of like an action list, if you will, or a checklist. How much more seriously are the youth's voices being taken now at these COP summits lately, do you think?
Yes, it is interesting question because on this one, they have the opportunity to deliver their points during the plenary sessions.
Directly, nice.
Where many of the leaders and also the head of the delegation are present. And this is one of the areas that is important for us because it is a recognition, a strong recognition. But again, in many countries, this opportunity may not be equal. So because we're not only depending on the COP29 as the sole problem solver for all the climate change problems around the world.
Of course.
We have to also depend on each of the countries to also, reach more ambitious targets. But therefore, in each of the countries, the opportunity for youth to present themselves, to be recognized, to be given the opportunity to voice out their voice is one of the areas that we have to still work on in many countries.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of them, there's so many smart youth that have come up with amazing solutions.
They're brilliant.
And it would be a shame if, the suggestions that they made are just left at that as suggestions. Now, I want to go back to the previous point that we made about some of the countries that actually protested against the initial funding that was suggested. The point here being is that, or the argument rather, is that a lot of the richer nations are contributing more towards the situation right now when it comes to climate change, for example, pollution and greenhouse gases. So was that argument valid, and was that finally received as hey, the richer nations that are contributing more to pollution should have to pay more? And is that how it ended at the end?
Well, it's still becoming one of the arguments.
It's a sticking point, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the sticking point. Well, it cannot be left out because that's historical facts. But again, if we are going to work on this, we have to work together. We will have to just like common but differentiated responsibilities. Well said. So despite of whether you are a rich country or you are a poor country, and developed or developing countries, each of us has their own responsibilities. Some provide more budgeting, some others provide a strong regulation on protecting the environment. So without these collaborations, it will be so hard for us to just push a more ambitious target towards climate change. So otherwise we could keep still arguing about
and pointing fingers.
We will never solve this problem.
That's a very good point.
That's true. That's true. Now we spoke about the youth's role in the COP29. How's the situation here in Indonesia, Mbak Hanna? Maybe you can explain to us.
Yeah. Actually, the youth voices are more heard recently because youth has so many ways, so many ideas of how to express their way of communicating. For example, if there's something that feels wrong for them, they know how to deliver it well. And on today's situation, their voices are more heard. And it's easier for other people to consume what they're saying. And what we do, we are trying to work with them in a way that we have to understand that they have concerns and then they have their own interests on saying things. For example, in Climate Reality Project Indonesia, we are using art to integrate the climate issues. So we call it Climate Art.
Nice.
Yeah. So we're trying to put the issues, the bigger issues, into something that is easier to digest. Like, for example, through music, through art, through videos and stuff, because everyone is on their screen, right? So we are trying to integrate the digital world into and using it as a climate action way to solve the current problem. And then in COP, we are also speaking and also collaborating with the youth. Like, for example, Mas Ari there was invited to a young panel.
Yes, high-level panel.
High-level panel as well.
Yeah.
And then we are working with Young-Go as well. It's a youth focal point in COP. So yeah, we're working with them to like create something that we want to other people to hear. So what really important is when we're working and to go together with youth, we're collaborating with them and trying to find how they see things, and then we're trying to put our shoes with them, and then work like and collaborate and doing more actions for them.
Do you feel like the youth voices, because we do know that, I mean, when we just went through our last election, look at how many new voters there were. We have, out of all the countries in the world, I believe we have the largest population between of the younger working age group as well. Do you feel that that is an advantage for us because we have such a larger, when we talk youth, we're not talking just teenagers, but basically between 20s to 30s as well. Do you feel like this is actually an advantage for us because these are the group, the age group that can actually take action when it comes
Yes, yes, that's a big advantage for us. Like, for example, in Climate Project Indonesia, we are based on 1,000 climate leaders, and 50% of them are youth, so like 500-ish are youths. So when we are working with them, we are discussing, we're just doing a chit chats like usual, but they have their own thinking. Like, for example, like, Hanna, I think we need to do this, 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 and this, but don't use the usual way, the conventional way. Use it with like a modern kind of way, so we can approach more people. So it gets delivered right into their mind, right into their hearts. So it's so fun to talk with them because they know the most effective way of how to put the harder terms, harder words, and make it easier for other people to understand. So like, yeah, it's a very big advantage for us.
And we have a totally different perspective as well, right? That
yes,
different perspective and able to kind of use kind of their advantage of using technology as well in order to apply that to the modern day world and what we can help to do with climate change as well. So let's look forward. One of the criticisms of one COP summit to another is the fact that a lot of promises are made and a lot of them just kind of carry over to the next summit. There was actually a walkout at the summit, and I asked you, has this ever happened before? And you actually said, no, this is the first time something like this has happened. Do you feel this is somewhat of a turning point for the COP summits and looking ahead now that we have reached a deadline for a budget, for a rebudgeting, and that agreement has actually come to fruition? What do you see for the future COP summits ahead, especially this next one coming? I believe you said it was in Brazil for COP30.
In Brazil, yes. Yes, it will be interesting to see how the development of each COP and then how it's going to bring further discussion and also on the collaborations. But again, what I can say and expect is that we do not expect solely on the COP itself.
Yes.
We as a member of the public should also take our actions, our parts. Because I believe that if we, member of the public, and we as a general people, create changes and drive our lifestyle towards a more greener and sustainable way, it will create the demand. Thus, the demand has to be followed by the regulations, by the government, and they just have to follow their constituents. Because if we make the climate change as our priority in everything, not just in our daily life, but also in politics, for instance, then the politicians, the government, and business has to follow us.
Yeah.
And then this will be one of the greatest change, I guess, if we can change our mindset, change our way of life, and to push government, to push the business to follow us. So solely depend on COP is not the solutions. But again, it's a good turning point where we can actually have the regulations, the agreement at the international stage. But again,
the highest level, right?
Yeah, the highest level. But again, the devil is always in the detail.
Yes.
On how to basically, channel the funds, access the fund, and many others. But again, it's a good one. But again, it's it requires all of us.
I agree with you. I know exactly what you mean. It's sometimes the general public will see something like, oh, there's a COP summit taking place.
Yes.
They'll take care of all our environmental issues.
Yeah, and
So they'll come up with all the solutions,
Yes.
but we don't realize that it requires all of us to make all of these solutions happen.
Yes,
And not just for allowing the from the higher ups and for them to take care of everything. And I think that basically this is just a platform for all the countries to get together and have these discussions, but it requires us at the basically grassroots level, isn't it? Every little thing counts. Take public transportation, you know.
That's true.
Don't throw don't throw your garbage in a river. I mean, these are simple things that are still happening, unfortunately, around our
now,
country.
how can we make sure that we as a society, we take part in, this is not only being a discussion, but it has to be action. How do we make sure that everything that we achieved in COP29 is, on the right path?
Yeah, so every time we're talking with other people, we are also telling them that there are three ways of solving the climate issues, and it's not only like relying on the COP itself. Like we have to work with the government, with the business owners, and also as an individual as well. And of course, we cannot like only demand the government to like do everything for us, and we cannot like just trying to protest and like do everything we can to make the changes happen from the up to the bottom. But like we have to make sure that whatever we do, it includes everyone on it as well. So we're not only like thinking about ourselves, because like of course if we're talking about the future, we're thinking about what will happen in the future. As for me, is it going to be safe for me? Is it going to be safe for my family? But we also have to think about the other people as well, and that what make the collaboration happen. So again, if you're talking about youth, the youth are thinking forward because the future is in their hands, my hands, my Aunt Masari's hands as well, because it's part of us. But we have to make sure that the collaboration happens between the three of this. So it's not only thinking about our future, my future, but like our future. So yeah, the campaigns, the programs, the activities that we do, it always includes this three. So,
whenever we talk about stakeholders, we sometimes forget that we ourselves are stakeholders.
Yeah, exactly.
This, right?
Yeah.
Not just those involved. So, real quick, you mentioned details. I believe a lot of our viewers, I'm sure, including many of us here, are not exactly sure what details we should be focusing on when it comes to climate change. So perhaps you could share on how people can find out, our viewers, more information when it comes to what we can do as a society. Perhaps more details on how we can get in touch with Climate Reality and things of that sort.
Yeah, it's important first to involve ourselves in a circle where we have the same vision and mission.
Okay.
Like for example, if we want to know more about what's happening, we can always in tune with the other organizations as well. For start, can always in tune with us, the Climate Reality Project Indonesia. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, but we're more active on Instagram, so and our website as well. So it's at Climate Reality INA on Instagram, and we work and collaborate with other organizations as well. And from that, we can see what organizations or what communities that we are suitable to fit in, because many organizations are trying to find volunteers to work together, and they have their own campaigns, missions, and events. Even though we work together as an NGO, but they have their own focuses.
Right.
So yeah, starting from that, that's important, because if we are on the same boat, we're on the same circle, we have the same mindset to do the things that we have to do. So like for starters, perhaps always involve ourselves in the organizations that we have the same.
It makes more sense and it's easier for us to do, right?
Exactly, correct.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for coming on the program. We've only heard the news stories of what happened at COP29, but we're glad to get a more deeper insight into everything else that happened as well. Good luck with all the future efforts, and thank you for doing what you've been doing so far.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
All right. So that was our second talk show of the day. Now let's take another break. But when we return, we will bring you more updates. So stay with us only on the C Morning Show.